We can't hear you. Susan, you need to unmute.
Ready to get started.
Yeah. So can we go ahead with the questioning?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I think this has been a very interesting topic. I think I'm going to invite different speakers to just say a few words, starting with you, Harrison, to get a feel from what you feel, what your feeling is on this topic, and then we will move from one speaker to the other, and also just share what we have from our side. Starting with you, Harrison, please. Is Harrison here? Can you hear me? Okay,
I can hear you.
Okay, we seem to have lost Harrison for now. Susan, can you please come through?
Sure. I'm so excited to be here to be discussing learning and developing a learning culture. For one reason, because learning is often misunderstood within organizations, and we need to think about how we can have a learning culture that encourages people to make it part of their lifestyle, and that helps the organization see benefit and to see progress. So those are my thoughts about the topic.
Okay, Ademola.
Hi. I'm really excited to be here, and I think for me, over time I've watched organizations get learning wrongly. Whilst they deploy a number of trainings, you see that they've not been so deliberate about the impact or even driving a genuine learning culture in the organization. So having to speak on this topic is really an avenue for me to share my side of the story and also to help other professionals on how to build or cultivate a value-driven learning culture in the organizations. So yeah, that's from me.
Awesome. So I think we can all agree that this is a common trend that we're seeing across most organizations to be reactive as opposed to being proactive in terms of embracing and being ahead in regards to the learning culture and influencing the learning that should be taking place with each and every organization. I think a great example that we have seen is the recent development with the pandemic and also the change that we have seen happening in the different organizations. So clearly, regardless of which industry that you are in, it is very important and really no longer a choice. The issue that we need to address of agility. And in most organizations, I think that has been nicely captured into the values themselves. For most organizations that understand the importance of agility. So I think let us continue up. I don't see whether Harrison is back live. Harrison, are you back? Okay, we've lost him for a while. I'll hand over to you, Susan, to continue to just take us through your thoughts in terms of addressing this topic at hand?
So one of the things, of course, is that learning must be a culture that starts from the top right up until the end. It's not a question of whether or not we should learn. It's a question of how do we make learning part of what we do every single day. And this means, as you've already pointed out, that things are changing really fast. So we've seen situations where, for example, the way people have had to rethink how they learn. So people moved away from the offices and they now found themselves working remotely. So they had to think about how do we support people to learn, because learning is still important. Learning is still a critical part of performance, a critical part of the organization, and that's the only way we can actually see results for the organization. So definitely I agree that learning should be part of the culture, starting right from the top, where the top leadership, for example, where they are always learning and they are also making and creating opportunities for learning.
Yes, I think Susan, you touch on a very important point of the top leadership. That change, if you want to influence the culture, if you want to influence anything in an organization, it must start from the top, and then flow seamlessly to everybody else in the organization. I'm not sure whether we're finding this a challenge. Is that how it's actually panning out in other organizations? Ademola, what would be your take on that?
Okay, so with regards to the leadership or management of organizations playing a major role with learning, I think in an ideal environment or ideal work environment, I think that's how it should be. However, I think the onus is on the L&D professionals in the organizations to be able to communicate value to the leadership, because we are all aware that the leadership is about ensuring sustainability of business. And if the person in charge of a unit is not able to communicate the value of that unit, he or she will get little or no support from the leadership. So the onus is more on the L&D professionals to really understand the value their unit is adding to organization, and to be able to communicate and also translate those values into naira and kobo, or tie it to the objectives of the organization, so that the leadership will understand how important or the key role learning and development is playing to ensure the organization and its staff achieve that goal that they've set for themselves. So it's about being able to carry the leadership along and to manage them properly to get their buy-in into supporting whatever initiative the L&D team wants to implement in the organization.
That is correct. I think that is really spot on. We do tend, as organizations, to experience the detach from the top layer of management and the rest of the workforce in an organization, which really then causes that disruption and affects the agility of doing things. Um, Having said that, Ademola, I would like us to just shift a bit in terms of addressing this agility issue and focus on the issue of digitalization. If we speak digitalization, which we should all be at this stage, what does the lack of imply, Susan? And what do we do to bridge that? Because we cannot take for granted that all organizations are up to speed in terms of one, embracing change, and also the resources that are needed to influence the change and that learning culture that we would like to see in the different organizations.
Okay, I think for the organization to be agile, because when I was going through this topic, agile learning, it's all about making sure that learning is easily available and staff in the organization can learn quickly and easily. And really, there's no way we can achieve that without adopting technology. I think joined the L&D unit back in 2011, and since then there've been conversations around e-learning and so on and so forth. So I think really at this point, organizations should really embrace technology to drive the agile learning environment, and also employ a lot of performance support systems to be able to create bit-sized learning content for staff to learn on the go while they work, as against being setting out days to go for trainings and all. Because really, personally, I would want to learn something I need at the moment, as against having to read an entire textbook to understand the concepts. So it's all about using technology and encouraging organizations to adopt the available technology to be able to provide hassle-free on-the-go learning content for the organization to drive the agile learning environment or culture.
Thank you, Ademola, which brings us to another dimension. Whilst we are thriving towards building this agile and personalized learning culture within all these organizations, we need to put special focus on the issue of transformation. Transformation plays a particular huge role in influencing what really needs to be embraced by each organization to ensure overall success. But we find is that most organizations are not addressing this issue of transformation as a function on its own to drive what we are discussing today. I don't know what your personal thinking would be around the issue of transformation and actually setting it up as a function. Would it be a good idea? Should it be infiltrated in all the functions within the organization? Should it be a standalone? What is your thinking towards addressing this and building agility towards the learning culture?
Okay, so for me, I feel okay. Susan, you can go ahead.
Go ahead. You can just start out.
Oh, okay. I think for every initiative or for every product, I've always said it that what one needs to for the success of your product or initiative is to get the buy-in of the users, because it's possible for you to implement a very good solution. However, if the people you are implementing the solution for don't even know so much about it, or they have not been carried along from the beginning, you end up deploying the solution and then nobody uses it. And that's where the digital transformation and the change management comes in. I think recently I shared on my LinkedIn post if the L&D curriculum has change management in it, because as much as possible, if, for example, you are bringing in a technology solution to drive an initiative in your organizations, and majority of the people in your organizations don't even know how to use the system or are not even IT literate, it means whatever it is you are bringing will not be used. So really, once you are coming up with these initiatives, say for example, the trying to drive the agile learning environment, first of all, you need to understand the pulse of the organization you are bringing it in, to know how much they know about this organization, and then provide as many information as possible. There is this change curve about people initially disbelieving, and then the things you need to do to bring them up to speed to the level you want them to attain that particular change. So it's all about communication, and that's what really the change management process is about. Providing the right information to the people, and also giving them hands-on tutorial simulations to show them how they are going to use this application, so that when this solutions or when these systems are now live, the people already know how to use it, and then they also would appreciate the system. So it's about communicating the value, communicating the uses, training them how to use it, and then giving it to them to start using. So yes, the digital transformation should come in with change management, with proper sensitization. And really, it could either be infused in the L&D unit, or depending on how big the organization is, there could be a unit, just like we have business analysts who like stand as intermediary between users and the IT. We could have a change management team that manage change. So their responsibility will be the one to understand the organization, understand the business unit bringing the solution, and then know how to manage the transformation, know how to manage the communication for the organization, for the solution to be successful.
Thanks, Ademola. Susan, your thoughts?
My thought is, let transformation stand on its own, but then have a foot within each team or within each department across the organization. One of the things we see often is transformation being curtailed because we forget why we are making the change, because we get caught up in the day-to-day business operations. So when you have transformation as a separate unit, but which has a foot in each different department, in each different unit, in each different length side of business, then you're able to be on the outside, but at the same time remain relevant. And where we are saying that learning is also transformation, learning cannot also work on its own. Learning also needs the input of the different teams in the organization that are bringing about the transformation. So a collaborative effort, not necessarily learning that stands on its own, but everyone pulling in together towards a common goal and objective.
Thank you, Susan. So I think what is coming out clearly here is definitely the need to drive transformation as an absolute priority if you want to build an agile and a personalized learning culture within our different departments. Obviously, with a detailed change management program, which will ensure the success of ensuring that the transformation is driven appropriately. I do find that some organizations tend to build it into their various sections within the organization. I have found best practice, however, and there's lots of organizations which we can benchmark with, is that the model of having transformation as a standalone office, fully functional to drive whatever it is that the organization has put on the table in terms of pushing the strategy, has worked better rather than assuming and relying on the different departments to bring about the change that you need. Obviously, it will have representation and a foot within, as you correctly say, Susan, representation of every single department. So you have change management champions, etc. But there must be an office which is a standalone, which will drive and ensure and monitor that this happens accordingly. Which brings us to the issue which Ademola touched on earlier, which it was my question, the issue of considering bringing in agility as a value. If we do not bring it to the forefront in the values of the organization, will it not take backstage? Will it not be overshadowed by the other values of the organization? So this is food for thought for other organizations that have not explicitly brought out the issue of including agility specifically as a value to include as part of its own values, so that it's not overshadowed by that if we feel it is of importance to drive a learning culture within the organizations. You will have to excuse me. I have a heavy flu, so I'm really sounding very strange. But so I do um, close the video when I need to sneeze because I have a heavy flu. So please excuse me if I'm sounding a bit strange. Okay, so let us talk about the issue of performance influencing the performance management culture, because you cannot drive uh, this learning culture in an agile manner if you do not encompass it and ensure that this is driven across from the top to everybody in the organization and is part and parcel of the performance contracts that we all sign. Ademola, if you can give us our just your view from ensuring that we infiltrate this into the actual performance contract. I seem to have lost Harrison. Maybe he's going to join us. But in the meantime, perhaps you can give us your views and we can speak around influencing our performance contracts.
Okay. I think one of the challenges the L&D units have been having, and that one of the reasons why they've not been able to communicate the value of their unit is because they don't, in most cases, most L&D units don't tie the trainings they've deployed or they are deploying to performance. Oftentimes, because I've worked with different L&D units, and oftentimes you see reports consisting of the amount of trainings that has been deployed and the amount of trainings or certificate that has been issued or acquired by the staff. And this does not really translate to performance. However, the moment L&D changes the mode of evaluation of their training to a performance-based evaluation where we are actually watching to see what you are able to do after you finish a particular training, then they will be able to start selling the value of whatever training initiative they are bringing in. And that's only when you can sell the value of agile learning to management. Because if you go on just by selling the fact that we've been able to deploy XYZ amount of training, in an agile learning environment, you are expecting that people should be able to learn on their own. So in most cases, you might not even have people to complete a particular training, but they are using their available resources. Now, if you are now able to tie their performance to the resources you've made available, then you can sell that solution you are bringing in to say, you know what, bosses, this initiative we are bringing in, we've tried it in this particular group, and this is the value we've been able to get. Team XYZ have been able to improve their productivity from XY to Z. And this other team have been able to, say, for example, effectively manage their time. Now they're able to handle more tasks than they used to be before we implemented this solution. Then you can start selling and you start saying that the team leads or the management to start listening to you. But if all you are saying is we've deployed 5 learning resources, we've implemented this solution, and people are using it, how do we measure the value we are getting from it? So it's all about being able to measure, change the mode of evaluation of our learning initiatives to really measure the performance people are able to do pre and post the implementation, and then sell that to our management. That way, we'll be able to effectively use our agile learning approaches very well and get more value, and then we'll get more backing or support from the team or from the management or leadership of the organization.
Thank you very much. I think you touched on an important point on the issue of measurement. Susan, what has been your experience in terms of the measurement of these initiatives that we want to bring to the fore?
So I've found that many times measurement is one of the most contentious issues in learning, partly because of how we define our learning in the first place and how we make that connection to performance, as Ademola said earlier. So the thing is, if you are able to find a proper baseline, what is our starting point before we put in any initiatives, then you're able to actually gauge that difference in behavior or difference in skill level at the end of the initiative. So say, for example, we want to tell if our sales team is doing what they need to do. So before you train them, where are they starting from? What are their numbers? What do those look like before you even introduce any learning initiatives? Then you have your learning initiatives, which have some very clear objectives and some very clear outcomes. And then at the end of the period within which you are rolling out your objective, you come back again and ask, okay, so this is where we started. This is where we are now. Have our sales changed? And how much of the change can we actually directly attribute towards this learning initiatives? So measurement is possible. It just needs for us to think about it a bit more critically and to also make the right connections and the right things to measure so that we are not trying to measure things that are more difficult or are not very tangible in terms of measurement. And I think sales teams are always the interesting ones because you can tie their performance to a number. And then you can actually make a direct connection between what it is they did and how it is the learning impacted on them. And as far as agility goes, how quickly are we able to actually provide the salespeople with the information they need? So if you're sending out a salesperson out into the market to sell a new product, which they don't know very well, then you shouldn't be surprised if they're not actually able to close the sale. So how quickly are you able to get them comfortable with discussing your product, comfortable with actually walking the client through the whole journey of start to finish as far as your product is concerned? So measurement, contentious, but very possible with the right measures put in place.
Thank you, Susan. I think we oftentimes do not take the time to put in particular effort in measurement in terms of checking whether we are being effective in what we are driving as organizations. Which brings me to, I know we have a limited time left, but before we finish off the session, I would like us then then ask the question: how do we influence the policies within the organization to help us achieve what we want to achieve in terms of the agility we are speaking and discussing about, and how we influence our learning culture in terms of our current policies in our different organizations? Because it's all well and good to to put all of this on paper, but you find that the policies which we have are actually quite old and really need to be renewed and to be brought up to speed in terms of what we want to achieve. And you will find that they tend to be the bottleneck in terms of where we are going in terms of driving our strategy and what we need to be focusing on in at this point in time. What would be your view, Ademola, in regards addressing policy issues? You need to unmute, Ademola.
So sorry. I think the policy issue is something that the management need to revisit to see what's currently working and what is outdated. Because right now, for you to drive agile learning culture, you need to be performance focused. And that should be written in black and white. because the things you measure with regards to the various initiatives you bring on board needs to change. You need to start measuring performance. You need to start measuring behavioral change. You need to put processes in place to actually evaluate pre and post initiatives, because really, if you don't measure performance before, whatever you measure after, there is nothing you want to compare it against to see if there's been any improvement and all. So it's about rewriting this principle, these policies, to ensure that these things are in place to make sure that, okay, you know what, before you send someone on a training, these are the things you need to put in place. You need to make sure, and also the vision of the L&D unit, the mission also needs to change, because I've seen quite a number of missions, and there's one of the L&D unit mission that I saw that really caught my attention, and it's about providing easy, hassle-free, on-the-go learning resources for the organization. Now, working with that, when you say you are providing hassle-free, that means it is easily accessible. So that's providing on a limitless amount of content with regards to the different roles they are working in, and making sure that the content is not just restricted to their unit alone, because as much as possible, for you to be able to innovate and adapt to this VUCA environment, you need to be able to read or learn fast. You need to be able to read from different units to even adopt into your environment. So it's about making sure that these policies support implementation of solutions that are not rigid, making sure that the environment, because really, apart from providing the content, you need to make sure that the environment is such that it encourages people to innovate, to challenge the status quo, and to also be flexible. Because if I'm in an environment where I'm meant to do things in a particular way, I won't see any reason to learn. And if I don't see any reason to go and learn outside what I already know, whatever implementation you put there, whatever solution you implement would not be useful to me. So as much as possible, it's not just the L&D policy that should be affected, but the organizational culture, the way do you encourage job rotation? How do you treat failure in the organization? If people are afraid to fail, they would not want to try new things, because nobody wants to work in an environment they are unfamiliar with. But when they see that failure is going to be treated as a learning opportunity, then you are encouraging people to even learn. And that's when, even when the L&D guys implement different agile learning solutions, they would use it because the environment supports it. So changing the L&D policy alone would not solve the problem of the L&D, but changing the culture, the policy of the organization, and making it an environment where people would learn, people would want to task themselves, people would want to take up new challenges. That's when the policies of the L&D would also be supported and will be effective. So that's my take on that.
And I like what you said, Ademola, about the document, because the document is not written in stone. It's actually something which should be live, meaning as things are changing within the organization, we're also able to adapt and update our policies to reflect those changes. And even what you said, that before we send people out on training, are we looking back and seeing what did we say we need to look out for in our document? And if it's not matching up to where you are, then you're able to update it, and everything then comes in sync, and you're able to move towards a culture that is more learning focused rather than just stuck in the old ways of doing things.
Exactly.
Thank you for that contribution. I think you've touched on a very important point, Ademola, and it's clearly painted a picture to everybody that these are, in order to influence the agile and personalized learning culture in all our organizations, we cannot ignore the issue of driving and ensuring that this is properly encompassed in our performance contracts, ensuring that we measure everything that we want to do is measured, And also the organizational culture would therefore need to be influenced. Now, this is huge. Influencing an organizational culture is not an overnight process. It is a journey, if I can call it that. It is a journey that will take a while, but the important thing is ensuring that we have the transformation office set up to properly drive everything that we have spoken about, everything that we have discussed, because we cannot run away from the fact that we are driving change as we try to influence the way we do things within the organization. It does look like we are starting to run out of time. I don't know if I'm saying correctly, from the team. We only have a few minutes left. Perhaps I can give you a few minutes to say whatever you would like to pass on before we wrap up our session, starting with Susan, please. Um, and ensuring that we've more or less covered whatever you would have had in your thoughts today.
Yeah, so I think we still have a bit more time left. And in terms of what my takeaway would be, is that there are two levels of culture when you think about it. There's the culture of the organization, but there's also your own personal learning culture and learning approach. So yes, the organization overall has the central responsibility of supporting learning, driving learning, and making learning happen. But at the same time, as an individual, they too have a responsibility to look out for opportunities to learn and to also, as Ademola mentioned earlier, see failure, see mistakes as learning opportunities. The learning opportunities are everywhere around us. And if we are able to embrace those opportunities and then see how we can actually take them and move from one step to another, we come closer to having all the necessary skills to survive in business today. And the reason why agility is such a topic, and learning agility at that, because we're in a situation we've never been in before. So the question then becomes, how can we take what we already know and apply it to our current situation so that we continue to drive individual and business performance?
Thank you. Ademola?
I think for me, it's recognizing or realizing that there is no learning and development without technology now. As much as possible, COVID has forced us to, at least forced majority of organizations to adopt technology. Something we've seen that it's been there for a while, but we've been taking it slowly. Now you see a lot of organizations taking advantage of it, and this is like a wake-up call to let people know that, say, if you really, really want to build that learning culture, especially agile learning culture, and when you think of agile learning culture, you are thinking of easily accessible learning content you can't do without adopting technology. Now, while there are a number of technology resources you can use, there are cheap ones that you can also leverage on, whilst you probably get the bigger ones. So the applications like the likes of the Google, because once you say you are trying to make things available, that's you are putting it in the cloud. So leveraging on the likes of Google Drive, Dropbox, and so on and so forth, properly filing, labeling these documents such that when staff get to the platform, wherever is it they're stored, they can easily access this content. It's something that organizations should start looking into, and also changing the mindset of people away from formal training as the only means of learning, because organizations, employees now feel if it is not, if I don't sit in the class or it's a webinar, then I'm not learning. You let them realize that even if they read on their own, it's also a learning, and so that's the only way they appreciate these things you put, the resources you make available to them, and they also see it as learning. I recently conducted a survey, and the report I got showed that people only see that Learning is when they get a mail from HR so that they've been nominated for a training and then they go for that training. Right now, if I send you an email containing a learning resource or a news, it is also a content for you in which you can learn from. And so people should be able to change people's mindset about how learning is, so that and also to encourage the pull initiative as against we pushing compliance courses programs to them. Let them be the one to also go out, just like Susan said. Let them be the one to go out, because if you put them in an environment where they are tasked, they are challenged, they will willingly go out to look for resources to make sure that they meet the deliverables they've been assigned to. So it's all about all of us, organization, employees, working together to ensure that we provide the learning for the staff, and also staff also use the learning resources available. So yeah, so that's it from me.
Thank you. And you both touch on a very important one. There's an organizational driven approach to learning and development. But I think we really don't emphasize a lot on the personal one, and which really is quite important when we tend to overlook when some employees don't pay particular attention to personally driving their own learning. Perhaps depending on the organization, where there is a culture of and there's some kind of a sense of some entitlement that this is what the organization should be doing for me, and if the organization is not doing it for me, then it falls off the radar. And yet, it's a self-empowerment becomes critical as well, which means that these two should be moving forward together, the personal aspect and also the organization itself. And I think it's one that we really need to drum into our colleagues in the workplace, so that when change comes, it catches you aware, not unaware, and it does not become as painful as some people perceive it. It should happen flawlessly, and I think most of us can attest to that some people do find this issue of changing things and the way we do things around quite a painful exercise, which it shouldn't really be. Which brings me to the important issue that becomes a challenge to most, and bridging the generational gap. This is a serious one because we can have all this in place, influence policies, but we must embrace that we have this generational gap that will exist in most organizations, especially within an organization that has an aging workforce. All of these issues that we have discussed since the beginning of the session are likely to experience some hesitation in other quarters, and that is an issue that we find no one really is comfortable in addressing. What would be your say around this?
I think the first step is acknowledging that it exists. And as you rightly said it, we cannot hide from the fact that we have organizations that have a very diverse workforce, where you have people in the different generations who view learning and approach learning from a different angle than what may be the current way to see things. Right now, we talk a lot about technology and how we can use technology to learn better, learn on the go, learn anytime, on demand. But then what about the person who, for instance, may not have grown up in the age of cell phones even, or computers came in much later in their career and they have no idea what to do with them. So one of the things I've seen working is having a sort of reverse learning experience where you have someone who might be from an older generation who might not necessarily appreciate technology, learning from somebody who does appreciate technology and understands technology. And then at the same time, because this also is a change, it's how the change is sold to them. Why do I need to learn on a computer? You could always print out for me a manual and I can read from a manual. So why are you insisting I actually have to go in and learn from a computer? So how you position the learning makes a very big difference. So are we learning to help you improve your performance? And why are we learning this way? What benefit is it to me? Because at the end of the day, every learner is out for themselves and to understand why this should be important to me. So getting them to see why this is important for them, how it can help them perform their job better, and how then it allows them to move in the direction in which the organization is moving. Because we say change is inevitable, but then trying to force change down someone's throat is never the way to win them over. Instead, go to the place where they are and take time to understand how they learn best and have a balance between how they learn best and how we want to learn today. Because yes, organizations have gone tech, but we still have people who would rather sit and be told by a person. So how do you balance that out? Have sessions where somebody could actually be in a room face to face, and then have a few sessions that are actually on mobile or on laptop or in an LMS, which this person can access in their own time. And then give them support through the learning journey. Don't just hope they'll catch on because, hey, you're bright anyway, you work here, so we know you're intelligent. Give them support along the learning journey.
Ademola, your thoughts?
Okay, I think Susan has pretty much covered everything I probably would have said. She talked about the change management process. It's never a one size fits all because, as she said, once you've acknowledged the fact that these people are present in your organization, is now communicating with them to understand their concerns. What why the resistance, or what challenges are they having, and seeing how you can address it. Coming up with technology, it's not that you deploy technology and take away all the physical one-on-one of classroom training. It's about initially coming up with a blend. Let them still use their existing way of learning and then have a taste of the technology. Then you get their feedback, and based on the feedback, okay, so it's all about communication. I said it earlier that once you are bringing a product or an initiative, you need to get the buy-in of those who are going to use it. And getting the buy-in is about selling what is in it for them, just as Susan said. And then over time, all the guidance you will need, because you cannot be in a haste to deploy the solution and leave them. You need to take them step by step, especially the aged generations who probably don't have the technology background. Take them step by step. Some of them we would even need to start from teaching them how to use the computer, not the application now, how to use the computer, how to log into the Microsoft Word itself before you now start introducing the application to them. And gradually, once they see the convenience, because everybody likes convenience, once they see that right there from their home, they can log into a platform themselves and take a course that will have made them probably stay in traffic and then risk themselves getting to the venue. Then they start appreciating this and they see that you get the same value. Then they start appreciating it, and then gradually you start changing the balance. You start taking off the traditional and then replacing it with full technology. And there will still be some who we know that will still stick to this classroom approach or stick to the traditional approach. It's all about communication and managing them effectively, knowing what the concerns are, and letting them know what the strategic objective of the organization is and how this solution is going to help the organization is achieving the goal. And then if the communication is well received, you see that these people start at trying it, and then over time, you also work with their peers to encourage them to use it, providing support and the likes. And even you can even start giving them some form of motivation to make them use the application. And then over time, you see that they adopt it, and then you'll be good with whatever solution you are implementing, regardless of what method is being implemented with.
Thank you very much. I think we've had a very insightful session. As I am cognizant that we don't eat into other people's time. It is now 2 o'clock South African time. Susan, I do think we've run out of time. But before we wrap up, can I give you an opportunity to wrap up from your side, and we can call it a day.
Sure. I think that agility and having a personalized learning culture is something that within with some careful planning and some thought and consideration and looking at it from, so learning can't happen in isolation. That's one of the things that I think we often try to do and fail miserably. So on its own, learning is not the only solution. Learning must work in tandem with the other parts of the business and with the other arms of the business and alongside strategy for and with the business. So the idea that learning can solve all problems is a flawed one. But then learning does have a very critical role to play in organizational success and in seeing an organization that can survive in the future, current and future business environment. So it is a question of figuring out how can our learning support the things which we want to do? What do our people need to be able to do in order to get us there? And often I like to see this kind of learning from three perspectives. What is the knowledge that the people need? What skills do they need to develop? And what other attributes do they also need to have to get the organization where it needs to go? And once we understand the knowledge, the skills, and the attributes, it also helps us with the measurement question, because the measurement question is, as Ademola said earlier, it's a value question. Where is the value in this training? Where is the value in this learning program? And as long as we are able to make those connections as they tie into the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that also tie in with the strategy, then we are sure that we can actually get a culture of learning and an agile organization that is able to survive into the future.
Great. Ademola, your part.
Okay. I think for me, it's recognizing the fact that learning is not an end in itself, but a means to an end. And the end is improvement in performance. For whatever learning initiative, learning program you are implementing, you should be able to clearly state the performance change you are expecting or behavioral change you're expecting from that initiative. For whatever learning technology you are bringing, you should be able to bring the value to the table, and that value should directly link to performance, and that's only when you can actually sell this solution as L&D professionals. So as much as possible, L&D professionals need to also improve their customer engagement skills. Just like Susan said, you cannot do it alone in learning. You need to acquire other skills to help you sell the learning and help you present these learning solutions or learning programs you are implementing. You need to take on different skills, project management, customer engagement, technology, quite a number of skills. You can go through the capability framework of LPI or ATD to see the skills required to really manage an L&D function. And then that way you're sure that you are well equipped and you know how to manage your stakeholders effectively. So it's all about value. It's not just about nominating people for training. It's about what they are able to do after the training and how what they are doing is impacting the bottom line or the helping the business achieve its strategic goal. So that's my take on. So it's all about focusing on the performance improvements.
of bringing the agility and improving their learning culture within their organizations. And I think for us, as an African continent, we still have a lot on our plate in improving our policies and processes, and bringing about the change that we want to see at the end of the day. But I think it's been a great session for everyone. Thank you very much, Africa. Let's go forth and bring that agility that we need in our different organizations and influence our learning culture accordingly. Thank you very much for having us. We wish you a pleasant and wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.